Welcome to the Tuesday, June 10th, regular closed session meeting of the East EBMUD Board of Directors. Director Odie is there on Zoom, will be participating from a remote location. Could you please do roll call, Madam Secretary?
Director Chan?
Here.
Director Gomez?
Here.
Director Katz is en route. Director Lewis?
Here.
Director Odie?
Here.
Director Smith?
Present.
President Young?
I am here. Okay, if members of the public are online and wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Do we have any speakers online, Madam Secretary?
No online public comment?
Okay, I do have uno card for Eric Larson. You have, as you know, 3 minutes. Refrain from personal information. Tell us who you are, who you're with, and you know how it works.
You didn't start your, give me 1 minute, Eric. Let's
Thank
start
you,
your
Lisa.
timer. You're welcome.
Thank you, President Young, board members, and General Manager Chan. My name is Eric Larson. I'm President AFSCME Local 444. About a month ago, a little more, I think 6 weeks ago, quite a number of our members came to the board meeting after receiving no down the line on the equity adjustments. And people were pretty frustrated about that. And I wanted to talk about the proposed equity adjustment process. But first, I want to start by talking about the MMBA, the Milius, Myers, and Brown Act, which requires public employers to meet and confer in good faith with the union over matters that fall within the scope of representation, including wages, hours, and working conditions. This duty to bargain arises under 2 circumstances. 1, when the decision itself impacts wages, hours, and working conditions. And 2, when the effects of the decision impact wages and hours and working conditions. The decision to not grant an equity adjustment is one such decision that impacts wages and is subject to bargaining. The district has proposed a mechanism to address equity adjustments outside of contract bargaining through a meet and confer process. Thus far, the district in its proposal has proposed that it will make the final determination on whether to grant an equity adjustment or not, based on its own evaluation of the merits of the argument. For those it determines that merit an equity adjustment, it agrees to bargain over the wages for that classification. But those that it does not agree, they're done. The decision has been made. And there's the problem. That decision impacts wages and is a mandatory subject of bargaining, and we will not give up that right. You've sought to address equity adjustments outside of contract negotiations. We ask that you give us a process that is fair and does not trample our rights. We have narrowed our list to 9 priority classifications. We can address all 9 priority classifications in a single meet and confer process and develop a new and effective and efficient process for addressing all equities outside of contract negotiations, which will help streamline the negotiations process itself. But we do need to include all 9 priority classifications, and we must be able to bargain over the decision. Thank you for your time, and I hope that we can wrap this up. Have a good session.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no other public comments, and it doesn't appear that there are, we will now adjourn to conference room 8 to discuss closed session agenda item 1. And we will return here for our regular meeting at 1:15. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Tuesday, June 10th, 2025 regular business meeting of the East EBMUD Board of Directors. Director Jim Odie will be participating on Zoom from a remote location. Could we please have roll call, Madam Secretary?
Director Chan?
Present.
Director Gomez?
Here.
Director Katz,
Here.
Director Lewis,
Here.
Director Odie,
I'm here.
Director Smith. Present. President Young.
I am here. Okay, please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we will now receive a presentation for the Women's Business Enterprise Council Pacific 2024 Cornerstone Award.
Thank you, President Young. EBMUD was honored by the Women Business Enterprise Council, or WBEC Pacific, as the organization's 2024 Cornerstone Award recipient. The Cornerstone Award celebrates organizations that provide a strong and enduring foundation for women-owned business enterprises to thrive. The district was recognized for the outstanding work of our contract equity program, which for over 40 years has demonstrated leadership in expanding procurement opportunities for diverse suppliers. The contract equity program continues to be a shining example to other organizations and, more importantly, a valuable and dependable resource for diverse small businesses, especially those that are women-owned. Established in 2000, WBEC Pacific is a strategic sourcing partner supporting certified, competitive, and established women entrepreneurs. With capacity-building workshops, supplier information sessions, and focused mentoring, WBEC Pacific facilitates procurement opportunities, business networking, and supplier development. WBEC Pacific serves Northern California, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, Idaho, and Montana. They are one of 14 regional partners of Women Business Enterprise National Council, which was founded in 1997. This recognition underscores the district's continued leadership in supplier diversity and its role in creating equitable economic opportunities across the communities it serves. Our Contract Equity Administrator, Beverly Johnson, is here to accept the award, and Director Lewis is here to present the award.
Great work, Beverly, as always. We have no announcements from closed session. We'll now move on to public comment. If there are members of the public online who wish to speak on agenda or non-agenda items, please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone with a hand up?
We have one at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
Comments on non-agenda items will be heard now. Comments on agenda items will be heard when that item is up for consideration. Can you inquire whether the comment is for an agenda or a non-agenda item, please?
D, is this for a non-agenda or agenda item?
This is for an agenda item, please, so for the rate increases. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will call on you when that item is up.
Thank you.
Okay, I have one other card, but that's for an agenda item as well. Are there any other members of the public for non-agenda items? If you do want to speak on an agenda item, it'd be appropriate to send a card up now or soon rather than waiting. We have some here. You can't tell.
Which item are you speaking on?
Just to raise a point of order, do we have a quorum here?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Do you do?
Yes.
And may I know the number of the quorum?
There's 7 of us here. There's 7 elected board members. 4 is quorum.
No, public quorum. Is there a quorum for the public? Because it's a public hearing, right?
We haven't opened the public hearing yet. When we get to the public hearing, we will go through the process of
I
opening.
just want to know whether we have a quorum, public quorum. hearing, and a public hearing should have a public forum, like 10, 15, 20, 30, something like that. So that's proper procedure for a meeting. So it's not about you people on the panel, but public forum. I just want to know.
We don't have I don't believe, Derek,
For any
so let me, I'm asking our general counsel, I don't believe that is a
we
feature
can-
of the law that we're governed by, but,
I think we can discuss that contention when we actually get to the public hearing.
yeah,
so
we're
just
not
follow
at the
the
public
agendas,
hearing, though.
so.
We have several items to go before we get to the public hearing. And is that your only comment or question? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, okay, very good. Okay, any other comments from the public on non-agenda items? Okay, great. Now we will move on to committee reports. The minutes for the May 27th Finance and Administration Committee meeting are provided in the agenda materials. We will now get an update from the May 30th Freeport Regional Water Authority special meeting and this morning's Legislative Human Resources Committee meeting. Director Gomez, can you give the Freeport report, please? Oh, I guess you're doing the Finance and Administration Committee report as well.
Correct.
Okay,
So, what was the date of Freeport again?
May 30th.
May 30th. During the May 30th Freeport special meeting, we approved the budget for the authority. We also heard an update on the golden mussel situation in the Delta. And we also got an update on a project by the Army Corps of Engineers that is happening in the vicinity of our Freeport facility. And we heard that Army Corps of Engineers project is not expected to impact our facilities. So that was really good news. And that's the end of my report for that.
Okay, and on to the Finance and Administration Committee meeting.
Thank you. And for the Finance and Administration Committee meeting, we received a legislative report and considered a position to,
Oh, wait a minute.
oh,
It's the Legislative
There-
Human
there's an
Resources
er-
Committee
Our
report.
secretary made a slight typo in the, mine says Finance and Administration Committee
So
below
you
here.
received the minutes for May 27th?
Yeah,
Finance,
keep
but-
going, keep going.
And then it says, we'll receive this morning's Legislative Human Resources Committee meeting.
Right, but then,
update.
okay, it's
okay.
fine. It's
So anyway, this is the
So
and
for the
human
Ledge HR
resource.
Committee
Yes.
meeting,
So we did receive a report considering a position on legislation to protect against the spread of golden mussels. There is no specific legislation number yet for the board to vote about. However, we will hear some more this afternoon at the end of today's meeting.
great, okay. We'll now move on to the consent calendar. There are 13 items for consideration. Are there any items that board members would like to pull from consideration? Okay, in that event, may I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Moved by Director Katz,
I'll second it.
seconded by Director Gomez. We'll need to do a roll call because we have a member attending virtually.
Yes.
Director Gomez,
Yes.
Director Katz,
Yes.
Director Lewis,
Yes.
Director Odie,
Yes.
Director Smith. Aye. President Young.
Yes. Okay, the consent calendar is approved with a 7-0 vote. We'll now move on to determination and discussion, agenda item 14. General Manager Chan.
Yes, in 2024, the California State Legislature passed Assembly Bill 2257, which is codified in Government Code Section 53759.1. The district provided a Proposition 218 notice to property owners and customers of record following the requirements of Government Code 5375.1, including providing a deadline of 11:59 p.m. on Monday, June 2nd, 2025, for submission of any objection alleging that the proposed rates and charges do not comply with Proposition 218. Government Code Section 53759.1 and the district's Proposition 218 notice provided requirements for submission of an objection. We did not receive any timely submitted written objections that met those requirements. We did receive other correspondence, however, that both relates to the proposed rates and charges and that does not constitute an objection. We refer to that other correspondence as a submission. Submissions received by 11:59 p.m. on Monday, June 2nd, 2025, that were labeled as objections by the author are included, along with our response, in Exhibit B of the resolution. Other submissions received by the deadline that were not labeled as objections by the author and that did not contain the term object are included, along with our response, in Exhibit C of the resolution. We're asking the board to consider all objections and other mailed or personally delivered correspondence, that is, the submissions, regarding the proposed fiscal years 2026 and 2027 rates and charges, subject to Proposition 218 and our response, and to adopt a resolution to make related findings and determinations in accordance with Government Code Section 53759.1. Phoebe Groh, our Principal Management Analyst, will provide a presentation on any timely objections received by the district, other correspondence received by the district, and the district's written responses. Public comment regarding Agenda Item 4 will be taken after the presentation.
Thank you, Clifford, and good morning, members of the board. So yeah, that was a great intro there regarding Government Code Section 53759.1, which was instituted via Assembly Bill 2257. And we'll go to the next slide here. Okay, so we'll just briefly review that portion of Government Code that we're talking about today. Our objection and protest procedures, they are different but similar, so it's good little reminder of the differences there, and then our staff recommendations. Next slide. Okay, so this is a little bit of review from what Clifford just presented, but in 2024, the state legislature passed Assembly Bill 2257, and that is what gives us Government Code Section 53759.1, which became effective January 1st. And the statute creates an exhaustion of administrative remedies procedure that requires ratepayers to bring an objection regarding proposed rates or charges subject to Prop 218 to the attention of the district prior to the deadline established by the district, which, as Clifford mentioned, was June 2nd at 11:59 p.m. And so that's just an excerpt from the statute. As a reminder, the articles of the California Constitution that are referenced there are what we also refer to as Proposition 218. Prop 218 is what created those portions of the Constitution. All right, so next slide. The other way, next slide. Okay, so this may look familiar. Down in the left-hand corner is our Prop 218 notice that was sent out to our ratepayers, or really owners of record and customers of record for both water and wastewater, and that outlined our objection procedure pursuant to this government code that we're talking about here. So outlined there in the box, separate exhaustion of administrative remedies procedure. And so the important pieces there, like as it states in the Prop 218 notice there, that the objections submitted by a customer would be state the specific rate change, provide the location of the identified parcel, include the name and signature of the party submitting the objection, indicate that it's an objection, and specify the grounds for alleging noncompliance with Prop 218. And as Clifford noted, we did not receive any submissions that met all of that criteria, but all of the submissions that we did receive by the deadline are included in the board packet as attachments to the resolution. Staff reviewed these submissions. None met the substantive or procedural requirements of objection, and we recommend that the submissions do not warrant clarification or changes to any of the proposed rates or charges or any other action. And then next slide. So mostly as a point of clarification, this is not part of the objection process, but there are a lot of analogs. We also have a protest procedure, which we've had for a long time. This is embedded within the California Constitution, part of Prop 218.
Sorry.
Okay, no problem. So that's also detailed on our Prop 218 notice. So we take protests, and we take the protests through the end of the public hearing, which is upcoming. And so we'll do later on a tabulation of the protests for both water and wastewater. The process there is similar but different, just a little less detail required there in that we will state the specific charge, requesting that information in the objection, provide the location. We need to make sure that the protests are submitted by customers of record or owners of record, and finally, just including the name and signature. So just only mentioning that here to say that they're similar but different procedures. So now, next slide. But this resolution that you have before you relates specifically to Government Code Section 53759.1, and we recommend to staff that you adopt the resolution and then proceed with a public hearing on our rates subject to Proposition 218.
Pulling out my agenda, my staff report. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from the board regarding the presentation? Okay. Are there any members of the public that would like to comment on item 14? Okay.
Sorry.
You are on 15, which is in the hearing. Yours,
I don't have a copy of the agenda.
oh, okay.
I don't know where you are.
We are on item 14, which was the presentation.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank
So,
you.
are,
The question I had was, if I,
could you come forward?
oh,
If you're making a public comment, we need to have you on the record. Say your name and affiliation, if any.
Terry Warham, I'm a ratepayer in the district and live in Danville, California.
Okay, and you had a question, I think.
Yeah, my question was, did I hear correctly that none of the objections that were mailed in were considered valid with the terms spelled out in this notification?
That is correct.
Well, I would like to check into whether my objection was properly handled, because I'm a very careful person, very detail-oriented, and I think I jumped through the sort of the process, and I think I complied with every aspect that was required. I would just comment, though, that the bar is set very high there. A lot of people are gonna miss something or
Yeah,
fail
well,
to
it's new-
meet
it is
all of the
new
stringent
legislation.
requirements, right?
Yeah, it is new legislation. Phoebe, would you mind conferring with, or Sophia, I'm not sure which is the right person.
I turned it in the post office, so.
Yes, this submission is included in the
As a
attached
protest.
exhibits to the, so the exhibits to the resolution are all the submissions that we received prior to June 2nd at 11:59 p.m. And most but not all of those are protests. This one is being counted as a protest. There are some that are not being counted as protests either because they were duplicates, like, for example, a husband and a wife submitted separate letters, but it's the same service address. So that would be one protest. And then at least in one circumstance, we could not associate the submission writer with a service address. So, but all those submissions, including the ones that were, that don't count as protests, were included in the exhibits to the resolution.
And just to clarify, even though we may not agree that something is an objection under the AB 2257, we are still treating all submissions as objections insofar as we have provided written responses to the board to those submissions. Is that correct?
We have provided written responses to all of the submissions that we received prior to the deadline, but none of those submissions met the criteria for an objection. as stated in the Proposition 218 notice.
Just have not received any return correspondence, on my part at least.
And
And I would like to know the deficiency for why my very carefully worded letter failed to meet your criteria.
Yeah, what,
Which is
I don't know who's needed for the next part of this agenda, and I'm assuming, Mr. Warnham, that you would like to hear the rest of this. We can, I don't know if this merits holding up the item to review his submission
do that offline.
and understand.
Yeah, we can do that afterwards and.
Okay,
so we
I
can
mean,
hear his
I-
comment.
Okay, so we will proceed. I don't know if I'm the only one having this issue, but when I try to pull up the full staff report, I get a broken link. So I could use the full packet if it's possible. Why, yours is working, mine's not working.
I think sometimes I have to put the www in front, or else.
No, I'm on the website.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm pulling it up right now. It's working for me.
okay, I don't know what's going on with my. No, it's showing up as a broken. It's fine, okay. Okay, so there are no other speakers for this item. Is there any other board discussion or comment regarding item 14? Appears not. In that case, do I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution for item 14?
So moved?
I'll second.
Moved by Director Katz, seconded by Director Gomez. Roll call vote?
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Gomez?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Odie?
Aye.
Director Smith?
Aye.
President Young?
Aye, or yes. Okay, moving on to our public hearing, which is agenda item 15. We are now on agenda item 15, which is to conduct a public hearing to consider the report and recommendation of the general manager for revisions to the water and wastewater schedules of rates and charges subject to Proposition 218 for fiscal years 2026 and 2027, and to comply with the Proposition 218 requirements. The public hearing is now open. We will welcome public comment. However, please note that public comments will not be included in the tabulation of written protests for determining whether a majority protest exists under Article 13D of the California Constitution, also known as Proposition 218. To be tabulated, written protests must be received before the close of this public hearing. If you have a written protest, please hand it to district staff at the table at the back of the boardroom. Can staff that are accepting those written comments please raise your hands? So they're all the way at the back, both with laptops waving, ready to receive any written protests. Okay, public comment regarding agenda item 15 will be taken after the presentation by our principal management analyst, Phoebe Grow. Phoebe, you're on again.
Hello again. Okay, so just a few slides to review our rates and charges subject to Proposition 218 for fiscal years 2026 and 27. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, so just, it's a fairly brief presentation, but we'll look again at our budget and rates calendar. You've seen it mostly before. Briefly overview the public outreach we've done for this budget and rate cycle. Look again at our bill comparisons, customer bill comparisons. And then finally, review the schedules that we're updating as part of this process, the ones specifically that are subject to Prop 218, and moving on to recommended actions and next steps. Next slide. Okay, so this is kind of walking us through at least the last several months for getting to this point for budget and rates. So we had a budget workshop at the end of January, and that was after an infrastructure workshop in November, followed by budget workshop number 2 at the end of March. And there we would have, that was the first presentation of really the budget as a whole and our rates subject to Proposition 218 for these two upcoming fiscal years. We did at that meeting, you also approved the Prop 218 notice for mailing, and that commenced shortly thereafter. So our customers would have been getting that through in April. And then we had another board meeting of significance in this budget and rates process, the first meeting in May 13th, where we filed the report and recommendation of the general manager for revisions to our water and wastewater schedules for rates and charges subject to Prop 218. And at that point, we set the public hearing, which we're in right now. After that, we had a Water Wednesday webinar. We'll talk about some of the outreach stuff in the next slide. But that was on the 21st, hosted by Sophia Skoda and Budget Manager Sam Feldman. As we were just discussing, the AB 2257 process, the objections period for that closed on the 2nd. And here we are today in our public hearing for consideration of these rates and charges and later on the budget. But those rates and charges right now are the ones subject to Proposition 218. And next slide. Okay, you've also seen this this slide before, but it's a good one to revisit. And this is just to point out that our rates, they are by far the largest part of our revenues, and they fund these investments in critical services that is what the budget provides. Everything that we do, it's all underpinned by these rates, or our rates and our revenues, but especially these rates subject to Proposition 218. Next slide. So all of these rates that we're considering right now, they are cost of service-based rates, and we have a cost of service rate study that underlies them for the water system that was completed quite recently, earlier this year, back in March. The cost of service study considers the whole suite of our costs, and the ones that are, the way it's outlined on here is those buckets of costs that we consider service components in the parlance of cost of service within that cost of service rate study. So a lot of different things. Next slide. We have a similar scenario, different buckets, but on the wastewater side, a separate cost of service study. We have that for that. That one was completed in 2019. And so again, cost of service base rates for these rates subject to Proposition 218 on the wastewater side. Next slide. We've done a considerable amount of outreach regarding the budget and the rates. There's a long list here of community meetings attended and presented by district staff, especially Finance Director Sophia Skoda and Budget Manager Sam Feldman, who were also the hosts of our Water Wednesday entitled Tapping into Tomorrow, Investing in the Future with a Proposed Budget. So those are a few little screenshots from that and from the presentation in Sam's office. Next slide. You've also seen these slides before. They are very slightly updated because some of the agencies shown here have since adopted rates. I don't think any of them made any changes from the proposed rates that we'd shown previously and the adopted rates now shown here. So showing EBMUD sort of in the middle of comparable agencies here in the Bay Area in terms of water bills. This is presenting a bill for a median use customer, median use being within our service area of 5 units or 5 centum cubic feet per month. And next slide. Same concept for wastewater. Again, for wastewater, the bills here are presented for both the collection or sewer system costs and the treatment costs. And for East Bay Mud, it is only the treatment costs. So that number for East Bay Mud represents our treatment rates, the pollution prevention fee, and the wet weather facilities charge. But then the other half there that's shown in green, that is the city collection charges, which we've represented it here for the Oakland ones, with Oakland being the biggest community within our wastewater service area. Next slide. Okay, and so these are the schedules that are proposed for adoption today. On the water side, that's Schedule A. So this is the main suite of water rates that customers see on their bill. The service charge, which most customers see as a bi-monthly charge on their bi-monthly bill that does not vary because it's charged by meter size. And then we have our volumetric rates, so that's our charges by each unit of water that is consumed during the billing period, and also the elevation surcharge, which is also a per unit use for anyone in elevation bands 2 and 3, which occurs over 200 feet of elevation, or that's where elevation band 2 starts. Also, as part of the water system, rates and charges subject to Proposition 218 is Schedule L, and that's our drought surcharges. We've discussed previously that these are, there's something newish in here, that we have included a Stage 1 drought surcharge as part of this, this round of rates adoption, based on recommendations from of staff from the previous, from the most recent drought, wherein we are finding that we need to, we do incur drought costs early in a drought, and that you as the board ought to have that option to institute a drought surcharge sooner rather than later. On the wastewater side, Schedule A is also kind of the main rates as we think of them, the ones that occur on the usually bi-monthly East Bay Mud bills. So that would include a service charge, which is the same for all wastewater customers, and strength and flow charges, strength varying by customer type and flow varying by water consumption. And then also finally, Schedule B within the wastewater system rate schedules, and that's our wet weather facilities charge. That's charged by lot size, small, medium, and large. And most customers would see that on their property tax bill. But the only customers that don't are those that don't pay property taxes, and that would be most often lands owned by public entities, in which case we bill them separately for that. Okay, with that, I think one more slide maybe. Finally, staff recommendations. We can continue on with the public hearing, and my colleagues in the back are tabulating any protests that we are receiving now. And finally, adopt the resolution that adopts these rates subject to Proposition 218.
Okay, we'll now open public comment. I have 2 cards at present. Are there any online speakers for item 15?
I have 2 online speakers. We're going to take online
Okay,
first.
yeah, let's go ahead and take those.
Mark Jaffe, you should be able to unmute your mic.
And just, you have 3 minutes. Please identify yourself, your affiliation if applicable. Refrain from providing personal information such as your address or phone number. If we need that, we'll have you contact staff. You'll have, as I said, 3 minutes to speak, and the secretary will track your time, and you'll receive a notification when your time is concluded.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Mark Jaffe. I'm the president of the Contra Costa Taxpayers Association. I'm also a resident of a condominium in downtown Walnut Creek. And as treasurer, I have observed the great increase in costs that we're being affected by throughout Northern California. We've actually had to impose a 20% HOA assessment increase on our membership, largely because of insurance increases, but also because of utilities, including water and sewer. So California and Northern California especially are becoming increasingly unaffordable. And it's really important that everybody on the receiving end of utility payments start to tighten their belt and not continue to hit residents with above inflation rate increases like you are proposing for fiscal year 2026 and 2027. I think you should be looking line by line through your budget. You should be looking, for example, at the fact that you have 5 people on $300,000 plus base salary, not including benefits. The general manager is having total compensation of over $500,000. And at last look, you were spending over $1.5 million on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. This is not consistent with tightening one's belt and trying to provide services in the most cost-effective manner. So I hope you'll take a second look and sharpen your pencil, take a second look at the budget, and come back with a lower rate increase. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you. I was reminded that we did not address the public forum question. Mr. General Counsel, could you please address that? That was asked earlier.
Yeah, so I'm unclear what the term public quorum means, but the only quorum that the law.
I just want to know, so we are having a public hearing. A public hearing should have a public forum. For an example, if the public, if there are 2 people representing the public and there are 98 people representing EBMUD, does it mean that everything is adopted? Because 2 people, there should be a quorum, just as much as there's a quorum to the board, there should be a quorum for a public hearing. That's proper meeting procedure. I just want a clarification on that. So for the public to, for you to hear the views of the public, there should be a minimum number at least, like 25, 30, 40. That's proper procedure. I mean, there was no signing sheet here, sign. So I guess, I just want a yes or no. It's a point of order. I mean, rule me out or just say there is no public, quorum is not required for public hearing. That's all.
So a quorum of the board is required, and we have a quorum of the board present, and that's the only legal requirement. There is no legal requirement for a quorum of the public.
Just for the record,
So-
just record my statement, that's all I think.
Okay. We need to get your,
Fairness to the public, because it's a public hearing. So public hearing should have a public forum, like 25 people.
Okay, sir.
35 people.
sir,
So
what we need is your name. I can't read your handwriting.
I can rewrite that.
Yeah, if you could work with the sergeant at arms to complete your card, we'll turn it back in to the secretary. Thank you for your comment. Terry Warham?
I'm sorry, we had, give me one moment.
Oh, I'm sorry, do we have another?
We did, but the person put their hand down, so, okay. We're
Okay.
ready. Oh, they put their hand back up.
Okay,
but
we'll take Terry and then we'll come back.
I don't mind stepping back.
Not a problem. Let me just get your
Just-
timer.
Okay. Me? Terry Warham. I'm a ratepayer in Danville, California. I did write to protest the monthly service charge rates and the elevation surcharge as proposed by the board for fiscal year 26, 27. From my point of view, East Bay MUD has increased rates relentlessly since we moved into our home in '04, over 20 years ago. The rate of increase is at least 3 times that of the CPI. I just used a handy benchmark of 2015, 10 years ago. Our current water rates have more than doubled since then, and these proposed Tier 1, 2, 3 rates, which are being handled differently, of 46%, 23%, and 10%, are going to boost my average usage by about 28%, okay? I tell people that our rates have gone up just an unbelievable amount, and now it appears that to celebrate Prop 218, you're bumping the rates on the average user in a home like mine in Danville, about 1/3 of an acre with landscaping, the rate is going up for me about, call it 25%. That to me just seems unconscionable. The elevation charges are something that I've spoken about before. I think they're kind of a ripoff. We're in band 3. Our rates have already gone up 97% since 2015. They're proposing, however, next month, an 18% increase. So just leapfrogging over all the previous rates. And then another 6% in July. Your costs of pumping water uphill have not changed that dramatically. Okay, you gave back a tiny little help on the meter rate, which is really insignificant for me. We've had water bills now for every 2 months of about $1,000 during the high use season. And that's despite doing everything I possibly can to lower my use for this. I've got solar panels, I drive electric, I get it about the environment, but I have tried everything. The bills are around 1,000. They're gonna go to 1,200 now, maybe 1,300. That's a hell of a lot to pay for water. And I can tell you that everybody in my HOA feels exactly the same way. They're just not as polite about it as I am. I second what the previous speaker said. Why can't EBMUD engage in some self-help? That's what the corporate world does. Manage your costs, spread out the CapEx. What's driving the spike in our price? What are your reserves? Do you not have reserves to draw down? Look at your staffing. When was the last reorg? Seriously, when was the last reorg that resulted in a significant downsizing, like every other business has to deal with? Pension and health benefits, absolute tip-top, gold-plated. Salaries, as we've heard, very generous. So I just feel like these price increases are overly aggressive. They're mercantile kind of aggressive. You have an effective monopoly. Despite the Prop 218, you have monopoly. You've got to get half your ratepayers to write a letter like I did and hope to hell they got every little T crossed and I dotted and mailed in on time.
Mr.
And
Warren,
only
your
then are
time
you
has
compelled
concluded. Can you please
to
wrap up your
back off.
comments?
So,
Sir, you're over time by almost 30 seconds at this
okay,
point.
thank you.
Thank you. Can we go back to our online commenter?
1 minute, okay. Tom D., you should be able to unmute your mic, and let me get back. Your 3 minutes start now.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Tom Dappis. I'm an EBMUD customer. I object to the rate increases like many of the people in the agenda materials and the other customers that just spoke. This is my first EBMUD meeting. Like many people, I'm typically at work at this time. So first of all, I would urge EBMUD to have meetings after 5 p.m., at least for these rate increase meetings, so that working people and other customers can attend. Just learning about this process, it's very confusing. It seems like you almost need to be an attorney to file an objection in terms of your information on how to file it. If it's a public verbal comment, it doesn't count. It has to be in writing. You have a 1,500-page agenda that one must sort through. And frankly, the majority of working people aren't going to be able to do that. So it seems set up to encourage higher rates and only serve EBMUD in that way. Also, I never received a workshop invite, although I get mailings from other public agencies, and definitely my address is there in my household. So none of this is really transparent, and I would urge EBMUD to do better than that. As mentioned, your rate increases are consistently higher, much higher than the CPI. It doesn't seem to matter if you barely use any water, you're still getting a couple $100 bill. And it's kind of like a catch-22. Sometimes when you do save water, EBMUD comes back and says, oh, since you've saved water, we still need more money to pay our salaries and so forth, so we're going to raise rates anyway. Meanwhile, customers are being hit by terrible economy, other costs from other utilities, food prices going up, and housing costs since COVID, and you're spending high amounts on your own salaries and benefits that most other working people don't benefit from. So I urge EBMUD to do better, cut costs, and be more transparent. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next up, I have, any more online?
No.
Okay, Maureen Hay, or Hi?
Much of what I have to say is very much what you've already heard.
Could you start with your name and
Maureen Hay in Pleasant Hill, California. And the two gentlemen that spoke before me were all in different socioeconomic groups. We all live in various and sundry areas that have more affluence and less. One of the things that I think has not been taken into consideration is the fact that the increases that you're asking for are so extreme in that between the current rate that we have right now to what's going to hit us July 1, and then if we look at our like up to 16% increases depending on the percentile, and if we look at our current rates today, and we look at where you're looking to go on July 1st of 26, it's anywhere from 13 to 23% increases. It's way too much for the average person that lives in our county and, or in your service area, but certainly in Contra Costa County, we have all different levels of economy going on here. Much of what was discussed in this document, which is where I got most of my information, was that much of this increase is needed for emergencies, for the monies that need to be in for emergencies. It seems to me that if we had an increase that was cost of living or something maybe a little bit more than that, but certainly not 16%, and then had some kind of documentation that said if we have an emergency, there will be a surcharge that's going to go on, but not taking this money up front, hoping that you're not going to have a surcharge and we're paying this extravagant amount of increase over our current rates. So I'm asking you, I'm not asking you to look at your structure, that's part of how you bring costs down, but I am asking you to keep in mind the people that are in your service area and keep in mind the increases that are just unacceptable as far as the percentages that they're going up.
Thank you. I am going to mispronounce your name, I believe. Melinda Morahaza, or something close to that, I'm sorry. If you could state your name.
Yeah, my name is Melinda Morel. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for providing me this opportunity. Okay, so my objection basically is on the wastewater treatment. So typically wastewater treatment, say if I use 65 gallons, my wastewater treatment cost to you should be less than a person who is using 200 gallons. So I find that wastewater treatment payment, the charge structure is not fair by people. If you encourage us to use less water and be environmentally friendly, you should compensate us by charging less for wastewater. So when I called you guys and wrote a letter, I got a reply saying that that wastewater treatment charge is charged by the city concerned and not coming to you because of infrastructure, capital expenditure they have incurred. I don't know when, but my question is, capital expenditure should be ameliorated over a period of time. And for capital expenditure, the cities get money from the state and the federal institutions to serve the public. So are they charging for that as well from the ordinary city customers? I believe so. And for capital expenditure, it should go down, ameliorated over a period of time, but it cannot increase. So right now, it's the same for someone who is using 25 gallons and 65 gallons, or single unit. Now, I live in an area where there are 4 units. Out of the 4 units, 3 units are occupied by one individual, and only 1 unit is occupied by 2 people or 3 people. So all that water flows into one place in the street and then treated. So is it fair for me to subsidize someone else who is using 200 gallons? It's not fair. At the same time, I'm concerned and I'm using less water. My bill is like 65, I use about 4 units, 4 or 5 units, right? So it's not fair for me to pay someone else's wastewater charge. That's not fair. That's not equitable. That's totally immoral and unethical. So I would really request you to consider that factor, because I know it's not your responsibility. City says, okay, charge so much. So you charge that, you take it from our bill and give it to the city. That's what I was told. Correct me if I'm wrong. So I think that's not correct, because my dealing is with you. You supply a product for me. I'm your customer. What you have to deal with the city is not my concern. So you have to represent me. As a customer, tell the city, hey, look, Cham, this is not fair by our customers. You are charging for a capital expenditure of $25 million US, which you incurred in 2001.
Can you please wrap up your comments? You're
in
over by 30
2005,
seconds.
you are charging more, and it's increasing. So that's my concern, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. That concludes the speaker cards that I have. Do we have anybody else online?
I have an additional hand online for public
Okay.
comment. Billy Trice Jr., you should be able to unmute your mic. Billy Trice Jr., you have your hand up, and you should be able to unmute your mic. And your 3 minutes start now. Your mic is unmuted, but we can't hear you.
Okay,
Gonna have to move on.
is he coming on? No?
No, the mic
Okay.
is unmuted.
I'm sorry, Mr. Trice. We need to now open the floor to, I guess we I'm sorry. It's as complicated as the notice. I guess there is not discussion in the public hearing? Okay, we are now going to close the public hearing, and I need a motion and a second to do that.
I'll move.
Moved by Director Chan,
I'll second.
seconded by Director Smith. Roll call, please.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Gomez?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Odie?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Aye.
President Young?
Yes. Okay, we will now move on to agenda item 16, which is to conduct a public hearing to consider the report and recommendations of the general manager for revisions to the water and wastewater schedule of rates and charges, capacity charges, and other fees which are not subject to Proposition 218 for fiscal year 2026, and to select regulations. Once again, we will ask Phoebe Grow, our Principal Management Analyst, to come forward and provide comments, or presentation, sorry.
Thank you, President Young. Okay, so yes, here we are, public hearing for our rates, charges, and fees not subject to Proposition 218. And this is just for fiscal year 2026. We do these on an annual renewal schedule, and this also includes revisions to select regulations. Next slide, please. Okay, yeah, so just kind of an abbreviated calendar here. Back in the first meeting in May 13th, you filed the report and recommendation of the general manager, this being a separate but thicker report than the one we looked at earlier. And this is for the revisions to the rates and charges, capacity charges, and other fees that are not subject to Proposition 218, again, for just fiscal year '26. And then also to select regulations. Those are the East Bay Med's regulations governing water service. And also at that board meeting, similar to with the Prop 218 rates, you set a public hearing for today, and that's where we are now. And we'll here to consider those rates for adoption, rates, charges, fees, and the revisions to the regulations. So next slide. Okay, and here they are, at least on the water side. So this is a whole suite of charges. The different schedules having several charges within them for the most part. Of note, this includes the system capacity charges, our Schedule J. So that's probably the one you hear the most about in other contexts. Next slide. And then also the wastewater system schedules. So there's, again, each of these has several fees associated with it. And again, included in there are our wastewater capacity fees in Schedule G. And on to the next slide. Okay, we also have that are really neither water nor wastewater, very particular sets of fees that are their Public Records Act fee schedule. For example, like providing documentation that is requested through a Public Records Act request, real property use application fees from our real estate group for dealing with land leases and other associated type activities, and our recreation use fees. And these unusually are for calendar year '26, so those would take effect January 1, 2026, not July 1, 2025, like all the other ones that we discussed previously. All right, next slide. And then this document and then the resolution that you're being asked to adopt includes revisions to our regulations governing water service. And so those regulations that have proposed revisions are included here. Some of them are very, very tiny changes, like updating references to government code. Some are more substantial, but they're all included in this report that was filed back in the first meeting in May. Next slide. So our recommended action here is to adopt the resolution that adopts those rates, charges, and fees, and the revisions to the regulations. And these would be all those rates, charges, and fees that are not subject to Proposition 218. And all recommended and summarized here in the GM report. And then if adopted today, these rates, charges, and fees, and then the revisions to the regulations would become effective July 1st of this year.
Okay, thank you. We will now open for public comment. Members of the public are online and wish to speak on this item. Please use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Are there any members of the public online for item 16, the non-218 rates and charges?
Billy Trice's hand is still up, so I'm gonna, Billy Trice, you should be able to unmute your mic. So I think this person is having technical difficulties, so that's the only hand.
I'm sorry, Mr. Trice. Do we have any, I don't have any cards for this item. Are there any members of the public in the audience that want to comment on the non-218 charges or the regulations? Okay, seeing none. If there are no additional speakers online for public comment, I will need a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, was that Jim? It's like the voice from
Voice from
Zoom.
beyond.
Moved by Director Odie, scared me. Moved by Director Odie, seconded by Director Chan. Roll call vote, please.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Gomez?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Odie?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Aye.
President Young?
Yes. Okay, we will now continue determination and discussion with agenda item 17, which is to adopt the rates and charges subject to Prop 218, recommended in the report and recommendation of the general manager for revisions to the water and wastewater schedules of rates and charges subject to Prop 218 for fiscal year 26 and 27. Matt, do we have the count?
We do. So for the water service area, we had 68 valid protests, and for wastewater, we had 19.
Okay,
And so you're going to read each.
yeah.
Yes.
So the district's water service area includes 340,754 parcels. The secretary of the district has advised that we have received 68 valid written protests from the record owners of parcels upon which the water service rates and charges are proposed to be imposed, or from customers of record, for example, tenants. Based on the number of valid written protests submitted prior to the close of the public hearing, a majority does not exist for the adoption of the proposed water rates and charges, or a majority protest does not exist. Accordingly, the proposed water rates and charges may be adopted and implemented by the district upon approval by the board. For the wastewater service area, that includes approximately 152,168 parcels. The secretary of the district has advised that we have received 19 valid written protests from the record owners of parcels upon which the wastewater service rates and charges are proposed to be imposed, or from customers of record such as tenants. Based on the number of valid written protests submitted prior to the close of the public hearing, a majority protest does not exist for the adoption of the proposed wastewater rates and charges. Accordingly, the proposed wastewater rates and charges may be adopted and implemented by the district upon approval by the board. We will now receive public comment on agenda item 17. If there are members of the public online for public comment, I think Mr. Trice probably has another shot at making his comment.
Billy Trice, can you unmute your mic? Your mic is unmuted, but we can't hear you. Technical difficulties.
Okay, are there any members of the public in the audience who wish to make a comment on agenda item 17?
Maureen Hayes has her hand up.
Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you through the monitor. You have to come, can you come forward, are you able to come forward?
Sorry, this is Maureen Hay, and I'm from Pleasant Hill. I just want a clarification. So in the future, since we don't have it today, to have any kind of protest for any rate hikes or anything like that, we must have 51% of the parcels represented. Is that correct?
50% plus one.
Okay, so that is correct. Have you ever had that?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay, because I think that it probably makes sense to make our public aware of the fact that if in fact they're going to have issue, just as your group does and ours, unless we get 51% or 50 plus one, that it doesn't really matter what we have to say. Is that correct? Or where do you take it in, where do you take any of our comments under consideration?
I don't know if I'm allowed to, I mean, I can give you a response. That is what Proposition 218, which was passed by the voters of the state of California, determined to be the process. That was an initiative, constitutional amendment that was passed by the voters quite a long time ago, and what governs our whole process around rates and charges, including the cost of service study that we have to base those rates and charges on. Yeah, I mean, you would be more than welcome to do that. What I would encourage people to do is to attend. We've had, I don't know, more than half a dozen, workshops and other sessions to consider the budget, as well as our Water Wednesdays and other public workshops. If you would like to make sure that your community receives, have somebody from our staff come out and do a workshop, we're more than happy to do that as well.
Okay, do you take into consideration any of the comments that anyone makes here?
We talk about
this-
everything that's been brought up is something that gets taken into consideration.
But
in the
you're
development.
passing it today, correct?
Well, the board has not yet voted.
All right, but you're voting on it today, maybe that's.
We are
a better
voting
way-
on
maybe
it,
that's
we
a
are
better way
voting
of
on
putting
it today.
Okay. Okay, it just seems very futile and from the public. And that there's so many people that need, or parcels that need to be represented to make any difference. And, I don't know, it's just very frustrating, I think.
Yeah, well, we do look at and change how we account for things over the course of developing every budget.
Okay.
So, in advance, many of those factors were considered.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, do we have, yes, Mr. Warnham. I'm just gonna add that you're adding that to your,
Do I need to restate?
yeah, just, your
Terry
name and
Warren,
where you're from. And
Yeah,
that's
Terry
all.
Warren, ratepayer in Danville, California, since 2004. The process, Prop 218 on its face seems like a reasonable process, but when you think about what it requires for people to independently receive your notification, sort it from the junk mail, sit down, read through it, craft a letter, mail it, email's not allowed. What I would humbly request is that if you're going to have major rate increases like this, you might make it a little easier for your ratepayers to register their approval or disapproval by giving them the form that says, do I approve or disapprove of the rate, the proposed schedule? Okay, I know you don't want to do that because it's too easy. It lowers the bar. No,
That's actually an excellent suggestion, and something that we could add to our next Prop 218 notice is a link that would help people download a form. That would not be a problem.
or provide a piece of paper literally that will allow them to submit back to you their opinion, yay or nay. As it stands, honestly, I think this would be an interesting social experiment. You could probably, I dare say, double your rates next year to say, 6% not enough. We want 100%. And I will guarantee you that you would get it per the rules in effect now. However, you would also get a lot of very negative press. I've approached my assembly member, my state senate member, and I'm asking them to get involved because a lot of damage is being done to a lot of people in their districts that they represent. And there is no effective means for us to push back, to negotiate, to get a break on this. And when you add it up with all the other expenses that we're facing, it's really discouraging. I've written to my ward member. I knew that was hopeless. You all vote in lockstep. I don't even see any debate in front of us.
Well, we haven't had our board discussion yet.
Okay. Well, I would like to see at least some sort of empathy. Maybe I can just beg for empathy, okay? There are always alternatives, and I just think you're taking the path of least resistance because you know you can, and unfortunately, you can. I get it. It's power politics. But I do think that you should turn it around, look at it from our point of view. Even though there's nobody here, again, all the barriers, I had to pay for my parking because your lot is full. I'm retired, so I can do this when other people that love to be here can't, because they're working for a living and they just can't break away. But don't judge the level of public dissatisfaction with your rate structure based on the attendance here. I can tell you, do a survey, you will be horrified at what people think about these rates and this latest onslaught, which is just, in my mind, unconscionable. So thank you for hearing me out.
Thank you for your comments. And I actually do think that the ability to download a form isn't a bad idea. But we're bound by Prop 218 in terms of how people, we can't change it either. But there have been there's many things about Prop 218 that make it difficult to provide water 24/7, 365 in a way that's equitable. Sir, I believe you've already maybe you haven't commented on 17. If you would like to come forward and comment on 17, you're welcome to do so. Please state your name and location again for the record.
Yeah, my name is Milinda Morella. Thank you for providing me the opportunity. 4324 Emeryville. So I think in piggyback on what the previous gentleman said and the other person online said, I think you should make it easy for people to come and represent themselves as individuals and customers by having these meetings on Saturdays or non-working hours, because I feel from reading all these things, from hearing what other people are saying, that this is set up to fail for the customer from a customer's point of view. So it's water. It's the lifeblood of a human being or a living being, a tree, an animal, or a human being. It's the lifeblood. Without water, you can't function. And if you are thinking in terms of this structure to increase the rates, I think it's grossly unfair, immoral, and unethical. And it's an insult to humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, if there are no other public comments, we'll now open the floor to board discussion or comments. Director Gomez.
So first of all, I want to thank staff for the gargantuan effort that it has been to get us to this point. I really appreciate your hard work. I also want to thank Mr. Warnham and Ms. Hay for coming here today to share your deep concerns about our rate increases. I agree with you that Prop 28, its process, sets the bar very high for customers to be able to weigh in meaningfully in the process. So this budget cycle, the board provided direction on how to manage our debt going forward. I was very pleased that this board agreed to set a direction for the agency that would see our debt issuance decrease significantly over the next decade. I really hope that my fellow and future board members will stick with the plan going forward, because the size of our debt directly impacts the rates that we need to charge and to recover our costs. The more debt we can retire, the less that we'll need to raise rates later. When I arrived on this board a little bit over a year ago, I was frankly surprised by the envisioned rate increases that staff presented to me. My constituents have certainly expressed their displeasure about previous rate increases and the proposed increases before us. As many of you know, my ward, Ward 2, is likely to be the most impacted by rate increases because of our larger sizes of our lots and higher temperatures. It seems to me that we as a board need to come up with a set of policies that identify the factors that we'll consider for future rate increases. What is our target? Is it CPI or inflation plus at a minimum increase after that? Where do we want to end up? And what are our policy considerations moving forward? What's our goal? So I believe that we need to be good stewards of our finances, and I'm afraid that we are losing some of our flexibility with our increasing personnel costs. We need to be careful, and we need to stay within our budget and stay within our means, and we can't just keep saying yes. So with that, I cannot support the 2018 rate increases, and therefore I will also not be able to support the budget this time around. This is a difficult vote because believe me, I know what it takes to deliver every drop of water to our customers. But I'm afraid that we're not going to be sustainable in the long term if this pattern continues. So my vote will be a no. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other board members? Director Lewis.
Yes, I also want to thank members of the public who've come here today and who've also joined us by phone. You're what makes a difference, not only here at East Bay MUD and with regard to water, but with regard to each and everything any of us do. I want to acknowledge in running for this office that the thing forefront on all of the constituents and ratepayers' mind was the cost of water. I can also tell you, I'm a ratepayer. I'm a little surprised when I get my bill. So please don't think that your comments fall on deaf ears. Please don't think that there are people here who have no understanding of what it costs to pay and to receive water here at East Bay MUD. By the same token, as a board member, it has been incumbent upon me to learn about what it takes to deliver that water. I just, again, wanted to thank the audience, thank all people who participated. Please know there have been lengthy discussions over many, many months about these rate increases. And as you may have picked up, everybody is not excited or doesn't agree with what, is being proposed or may have to happen, or what have you. So my comments are really to assure you that people do listen, people do feel your pain, but that there are a lot of moving parts, believe it or not, to delivering water, cleaning up water, and planning to deliver water into the future.
Director Katz.
Thank you, President Young. And I would like to join Director Lewis in also sharing that I understand that what it means to open up the bill and to look and see how much I have to pay every other month. I know that all of us on this board and the staff take it very seriously, that we should be ensuring that we're taking our responsibility as a board seriously, and that what we're asking our customers to pay for their bi-monthly bills is what is necessary to be able to provide reliable, high-quality water service and wastewater service to the public. And I know through the many infrastructure workshops that we've reviewed, that the infrastructure plans that we've evaluated are necessary. We want to make sure that we don't have main breaks that disrupt neighborhoods. We want to make sure that we provide reliable water for our customers, that we're prepared for regulatory developments, and that we're moving at a reasonable pace to make sure that our infrastructure is sound for the next 100 years. And what I'm very excited about is that the pace of our increasing rates has slowed compared to prior budgets. And this board and our staff have deliberated very carefully about that to make sure that we can provide that progress of balancing affordability for all of our customers as well as ensuring reliable water supply. Finally, we've committed ourselves to affordability for our low-income customers, and while that's not a part of the rate increase, we make sure to use other sources of funds to be able to provide affordability. We take that very seriously for our low-income customers. There are many things that I'm excited about in this budget, particularly our increased commitment to providing outdoor education in our watershed for youth in the K through 12 system. There are meaningful improvements and infrastructure investments that are in this budget that we've covered in other workshops, and I won't repeat all that here, but I think it's this budget is important to be able to do our work so that we can serve the 1.4 million customers that we are chartered by state law to do. Thanks.
Any other board member comments? Director Odie, do you have a comment or?
Sure, I can be brief. I do want to echo my colleagues' comments about appreciation for first the members of the public who came out and expressed their opinion. That's always important to us, and also to the thousands of people hours by our staff that put the budget and the Prop 218 study together and actually built the rates. This is not something that is a happy job to do, but I think it's a necessary job to do. We've gone through, the capital improvements necessary, and we put funding together for that. Prop 218, we're not a for-profit utility. I mean, we're not PG&E where they can build profit into their rates. We do a study, we figure out how much it costs to provide the service, and our rates have to match those costs. So that's what we do. So I think it's super critical to remember that. And a lot of it is labor intensive. We can't just build a piece of AI code, for example, to fix a water main break, on the Embarcadero, for example. It's labor intensive, it's equipment intensive, and so all of these things cost money. But the one thing, I am super concerned about, and I'm glad is part of the budget, and you'll hear me say this again, the wastewater facility, there is one intake that if that intake goes in an earthquake, then sewage will not only spill in the West Oakland portion of my ward, it will back up through the entire wastewater service area. So these are the type of things that keep me up at night as a board member, and that I want to make sure are remedied and fixed and retrofitted for earthquake, so we don't have a disaster happen on our watch. So thank you.
Director Smith?
So I guess I'm dittoing my thanks to our staff, as well as everyone who took the time and interest to review what's going on with this process and decided you wanted to participate and engage. Along with our maintenance of infrastructure, our very attentive processes for our water and wastewater, so that folks can turn on the tap and have absolutely 100% quality water from our main. I can't speak to your own personal plumbing, but that's there. I've been working here since 1992, and for fewer than 5 years, I lived outside of this water source. It was putrid. It was terrible. I had to go to my mom's place and get water to take to my house. If you've lived somewhere where the water is often off or tastes bad or looks questionable, I could understand getting upset about this. Nobody really wants their budgets to get inflated beyond what they would like it to be. Yet, we need the water, and we do what's necessary to make sure that this absolute necessary resource meets the criteria, and in many cases exceeds the criteria. We've got staff that serve, that work, and sometimes get hurt while doing this work. But rarely does anybody complain. I understand. I truly do. I work hard to conserve the water that comes to my house. But I'm not trying to tell somebody else how to live. All I'm saying is, we got a good thing going here. Our water rates are pretty much in the middle, if you saw in the slide. Wastewater is a little bit outside of us because of the cities. It's not that we don't care. We want to continue to have the good infrastructure and everything else that's been brought up. And we will do our best to manage and maintain all of our resources responsibly and continue to have our conversations trying to get to a reasonable mark, not just for East Bay Mud, but also for our ratepayers.
Thank you. Dr. Chan.
Yeah. I do want to thank people for coming in and talking about the rates, because this is something that is very important to my constituents as well. I know when I've walked door to door and talked to my neighbors, this is something that they're very concerned about. So I understand, and I feel the pinch too, personally in my household, of all the increased costs that we're having to pay for, as people said, food, water, transportation, everything. So I understand all of that. But at the same time, I'd like you to understand that as our costs go up, so does the district's. And so what we have to pay for, not just labor, but what we have to pay for chemicals, what we have to pay for materials, is going up as well. So while it's painful to have, I don't even think this is a sharp increase, but while it's painful to have an increase like this, the people I've talked to have said, yeah, well, let's just do it now. And let's get this cost over with. Let's get the infrastructure working, because any sort of delay would probably mean an increase in cost. And so that is why I'm supporting this today. Now, I want to say that when I first was elected, and the general manager will remember these conversations about how it was 8.5% increase. And I told the general manager, listen, that's just too much. I think 8.5 is too much. And that's why the staff worked extremely hard to get the increase down to 6.5%. So, I'm proud of that, because I think it could be so much worse. I think that a lot of agencies are raising much more, and I think that we've really tried to show restraint when it comes to this particular increase. So, anyway, those are the end of my comments. I think it's fiscally responsible to work on our infrastructure now, as opposed to waiting and possibly having more main breaks and more damage to our infrastructure and having to fix it.
Okay, I'm going to add my thanks and appreciation both to the public that has expressed their comments and participated in. I'm actually curious, do we have a number of how many public presentations and other workshops that we've done over the course of the last few months outside of our board meetings? Kelly, do you know, or?
It's close to, it's in there, I think it's close to 20.
Which maybe is not enough. And I take to heart the comments made in appreciation of having evening meetings. I actually tried to have evening meetings. We had 3 people show up. We did a lot of outreach. I'm not opposed to trying that again. I tried it a couple times. Actually, the only public meeting that got a large turnout was whether to open the watershed to bikes or not. And that, we packed a room for that one. The work of providing reliable, affordable water and wastewater 24/7, 365 to 1.6 million water customers and 800,000 wastewater customers is a huge undertaking. It's a massive organization. It is very labor intensive. It is very capital intensive. And prior to my beginning service, I'm almost a lifelong East Bay MUD customer myself. The amount of pipeline that we were replacing was well under 10 miles per year out of 4,000 plus miles of pipeline. Since my election, and over, I mean, it was already starting to happen, but this board has committed itself and the staff's committed itself to stepping that up dramatically so that we are able to continue to providing what you don't even think about, which is that when you turn on your faucet, as long as everything in your house is okay, you're going to get the best water in the country, no matter what. Part of that is a blessing that we didn't do any, I mean, we appropriated water from the Sierra to get that, but we benefit from it today. And for those of us that, for the 90% or so of our customers that, I think it's 90%, receive that water without an ounce of energy added to pump it anywhere. That's why we have elevation charges at the level that we have them, is because most of our water is served by gravity. We can't subsidize that cost. Under Prop 218, we cannot subsidize that cost to customers that don't get their water pumped to them, as a for instance. So the cost of ensuring that our infrastructure is going to be here for the next 100 years has been largely been financed a lot by debt. Personally, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but it does over time has caused us to have to increase our rates. And we're now seeing, as we look in the long term, the ability to cut back on that debt financing so that in the future, it's a ways in the future, those increases are going to go down. We will still be having increases. As Director Smith said, it is in the mid-range of what utilities are charging around the Bay. And it's a duty and responsibility that we have to really take to heart. We're at the center of climate change, which means that our water supply is, something we have to plan diligently for into the future. All of that costs money, and it is a $2 billion enterprise. So yeah, the people that are at the top get a pretty good wage for it. Way more than I ever made in my life. And it's appropriate. Our people work hard for a living, and they do get good benefits, and that's why they stay here. And why we have some of the most reliable, conscientious, and hardworking employees that you will find anywhere. So I am also conscious that I live in a neighborhood where a lot of people really can't afford to pay their water bill. And one of the things that burns me about Prop 218 is that we can't offer lifeline rates. So we have to come up with other sources of revenue to support our lowest income customers. And I wish we didn't have to do that. I wish we could offer, or we could be required to offer a lifeline rate that came out of our rates and charges as private utilities governed by the CPUC are required to do, but we can't. So I believe after months and months of looking at this budget, at the cost of service, and going line by line, through the budget, that this is a prudent and worthy vote, and I appreciate the diligence that staff and the rest of the board has put into it. So thank you. With that, I think everybody has spoken. I need a motion and then a second, and then we will vote.
Okay.
Move.
Moved by Director Chan,
Second.
seconded by Director Smith to adopt the rates and charges. Roll call vote.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Gomez?
No.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Please come back to me.
Director Odie?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Aye.
President Young?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
No.
Okay, adopted on a 5-2 vote. Our next item is item 18, which is to adopt the rates, charges, and other fees not subject to Prop 218 for fiscal year 2026, and the revisions to select regulations is recommended in the report and recommendation of the general manager, titled Revisions to the Water and Wastewater Schedule, Rates, Charges, and Fees Not Subject to Proposition 218 for fiscal year 2026, and to select regulations, filed with the Board of Directors on May 13th, 2025. Do we have any public comment on agenda item 18?
No online comment?
And none in the room?
No.
Board discussion? Okay, then do I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution for item 18?
So moved.
Directed, moved by Director Odie,
I'll second.
seconded by Director Smith. Roll call vote, please.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Gomez?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Odie?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Aye.
President Young?
Yes. I have to say, I'm a little puzzled.
And different fees.
What?
They're different fees. It's a different
Portion of it.
there's a rationale.
Okay, I'm fine. I'm fine.
In this special district, one that serves wastewater is for a different geography
Yes, very
than.
different.
Okay, we will now move on to agenda items 19 and 20. Following the staff presentation, the board will take separate votes on these items, and I do have a speaker card for agenda 20. So,
Well, let's start with the next two items. I think, Sophia, you're going to speak on those two items. This is the adopting the operating debt service and capital budgets for the water and wastewater systems and the position resolution for fiscal years 26 and 27.
Thank you very much to the public who came to hear us today, and to those who wrote to oppose, and the one person who wrote to support the proposed rate changes. Your voices are important, as the board has already shared, and they do help to shape our work as we hear your priorities. I do want to note that parts of the proposed budget are planned to spur efficiency and innovation to make best use of your rate dollar, and also want to make note that our customer assistance program continues to be an important piece of how we support low-income individuals and homeless shelters in being able to afford core water and wastewater services. I also want to note that our drought surcharges that were included in the Proposition 218 notice will be brought back to the board in the event of a drought, with a corresponding budget for consideration. So with that, moving on to our next slide, the budget addresses our core challenges, which are aging infrastructure, really the key piece of investment in this budget, in new infrastructure to ensure reliability and resiliency of our water system. In water quality, continuing to preserve the high-quality water our customers expect in meeting and passing our regulations. And continuing to be an excellent steward of the environment. Stewardship of our watershed and the San Francisco Bay are core challenges and opportunities for the district. And climate change as we look to adapt through infrastructure investments. But last, and in some ways, most important to me as the finance director is the fiscal responsibility piece. Maintaining a strong financial position for the district so that we will be able to manage through the next wildfire or earthquake, and also making sure that we have sustainable finances, including that our customers can afford our bills. On our next slide, we'll show the calendar. There have been some questions from staff that have arisen, and also from the public around, what were all of the pieces that came to bear? Where could my voice have been heard? We post our agendas on the website, and all of these workshops are open to the public. So 18 months of work is sort of culminating today in this budget public hearing, but we have had board workshops on climate action plan, recycle water, our cost of service on the rates, our strategic plan, and the key performance indicators that our managers are tasked with meeting. An infrastructure workshop was held in November, and our first board workshop, as my colleague Phoebe mentioned earlier, was held first in January, the second in March, and then public outreach. And we thank you for the voices to encourage a wider reach when we go out in the future for any rate increases. So the board is now here on June 10th considering adopting our budget. And so I'll talk a little bit more about what's in that budget and also what we did do with respect to community engagement. So our Budget and Rates Roadshow was held throughout Alameda and Contra Costa counties, including attendance at the mayor's conferences and giving presentations to all the mayors of the cities in our service area. We attended meetings at various community and civic groups. We are always interested in the names of places where we can go to share information and answer questions for our public. We also held internal forums, both for our unions and for our staff. And we published pieces in community and city newsletters, again, throughout our service area. The main piece of communication with our public is, of course, the Proposition 218 notice, which many speakers brought with them up to the front. That was mailed in the March and April periods, late March, mostly in April. And we did do some work around press releases and interviews with the media. And additional outreach is encompassed in changes and postings on ebmud.com/rates, our Water Wednesday webinar, and other videos and social media as well. In terms of the water budget, for fiscal years 26 and for fiscal years 27, the sources of funds, $2.7 billion over 2 years, with our operating costs at just under $1 billion over those 2 years. Additional debt service, that's our mortgage. So we fund, let's say, 40% of our capital with debt. And so that means we're taking out a mortgage and paying that over 30 years, which allows for intergenerational equity. Again, we're trying to bring down the level of debt that we're issuing so that we have more room in the budget for emergencies and when we might really want to issue debt in the future to make sure that rates are staying as low as possible, even through an emergency. Staffing, it does include an addition of 10.5 full-time equivalent staff to the waterside budget and capital improvements of $1.2 billion over the next 2 years. For those that are wondering, over the next 10 years, we are proposing to spend about $5.6 billion. In addition to the sources of funds identified at the top of this slide, we will be issuing debt over the next 2 years, and the estimated amount is $650 million in new bonds, and again, spread over 30 years. With regards to the average rate increases, the average rate increase for fiscal year 26 is 6.5% increase and a 6.5% increase for fiscal year 27. As a result of the cost of service, the changes in that first year are not uniform across every customer. And so that's where the different numbers were from speakers who came forward here. If we move on to the next slide, This is a graphic that just shows how is the average dollar spent. And so about 56 cents of that dollar is spent on infrastructure improvements. Another 26 cents of that dollar is spent on water service, 7 cents on administration and customer service, 6 cents on natural resources management and regulatory compliance, which includes work on our watershed management programs, and then water supply coming in at 5 cents with supply planning, conservation, and alternative water supplies. In terms of the large projects that we're investing in on the infrastructure side, we are continuing to increase and invest in the miles of pipeline that we're rebuilding, as was mentioned by Director Young, and also making investments in large diameter pipelines. There's investment that's being made both at Orinda and our Upper San Leandro water treatment plants to enable us to treat a wider range of water quality that we're seeing with changing climate. We are replacing Central Reservoir in Oakland, going from one very large reservoir to 3 smaller reservoirs, which will enable us to have more operational flexibility and will also assist us with obtaining, kind of meeting our goals for water quality. And we are doing work on realigning our aqueducts, specifically McCollum Aqueduct number 2 and Lafayette Aqueduct number 1. On the water quality front, we're also making improvements at Pardee, which is where our water originates, that will help us manage water quality in our service area further down, 90 miles away. And in addition, we'll be making investments at Lafayette Water Treatment Plant in disinfection and also in how we manage residuals of the water treatment process. In terms of climate change and resiliency, we have work on Walnut Creek and recycled water improvements. And again, on the fiscal responsibility side, as was mentioned by Director Gomez, bringing down the level of debt over time that will make us more resilient. On the wastewater side, as we move to the next slide, the total sources of funds coming in at a little bit under $500 million over 2 years, with our operating expenses at about $243 million, debt service at $73.4 million projected over the next 2 years. We are adding 2 staff, FTE, full-time equivalents, and expect to spend $170.8 million in capital over the next 2 years with a 10-year CIP of $1.2 billion. Again, issuing debt on the wastewater side as well, $75 million projected over the next 2 years. Average increases, rate increases higher than on the water side as a result of the far older infrastructure on the wastewater side of our enterprise. At 8.5 projected for 26, 27. And if you look at our 10-year projections, those are hoping to come down over the next 10 years, reaching approximately 5% at the end of that period is the projection. On the wastewater side, our dollar breaks down with about 43 cents on wastewater treatment services. And then if you look at the bottom of the slide, another 43 cents on wastewater treatment plant facilities and sewer interceptors. That includes the interceptor that was mentioned by Director Odie that he thinks about. 6 cents on customer service administration and 5 cents on environmental and regulatory compliance, with another 3 cents on our laboratory services that serve our water and wastewater customers and also serve other agencies in the Bay Area for a fee. Moving on to our next slide, the infrastructure that we expect to invest in include a new dewatering building at the wastewater plant, work on our reactors and clarifiers, and also some major seismic work. And on the water quality side, really looking to innovatively address nutrients. We're fortunate to have a lot of amazing universities in the Bay Area and able to take advantage of hiring staff from those universities to come up with really innovative and more cost-effective treatment than is available on the market today. In terms of climate change, we're working on the influent pump station resiliency project, and again, looking over time to bring down the level of debt as well. Moving on to our next slide. This is the actual budget that we are proposing to be adopted. It shows our operating, debt service, and capital expenses both on the water and the wastewater slides for fiscal years 26 and fiscal years 27. And again, for the public, our fiscal year starts on July 1 of every year and goes through the end of June of the following year. So with that, we recommend that the board adopt this budget. I also wanted to share, if Mr. Warren is still here, not in the audience at present, we'll follow up with him to share information about his protest, which was counted as a protest, but submitted as a protest and not as an objection. And with that, I will take any questions from the board or from the public.
Sophia, as I was looking through all of the protests, it seemed like the key thing that was not stated in the protests that were not considered objections is it didn't have the word objection in it, and that was the primary thing that was left out.
I think that's a fair statement. Many of them said protest very specifically, and some of them said objection and protest, and some said just objection. Correct.
Okay, so what we want is to have public comment on item 19, which is the budget. And then item 20 is the position resolution. So comments on item 19. Nothing online, nothing in the room. Board discussion on item 19, the budget. Everybody's exhausted, okay. My only comment would be, I think it would, if it's possible, and I don't know if it is possible within the procedure of doing this, is that it'd be better to have this discussion prior to the Prop 218 hearing. And I don't know if that's possible or not, because it does provide information that supports the rates and charges.
Yeah, I think we have latitude there.
Okay.
In the future.
But maybe we can adopt the budget without adopting rates and charges beforehand.
I think we can do it beforehand. We've done it in the past.
Okay, yeah, so in the future, let's do because I think that enables discussion about things like elevation charges and, does how does it come to pass that the cities pass through their sewer charges to us and things like that. Director Katz?
Yeah, I offered comments earlier in the rates and charges that addressed the budget. And, I could imagine that if the budget were to be deliberated on first and then to not pass, or if it were to pass and then the rates were to not pass, then we would have to revisit the budget, of course. But I think the votes on the budget and rates would typically be consistent. So I think that's a good idea to make sure that I think it's a good thing to explore.
Any other comments? I do think most of us talked about the budget when we were talking about rates. So Director Lewis?
Yeah. I didn't take an opportunity when I spoke earlier to also thank the staff for all of the good work and the hard work. And I also want to comment in the months that I've been here, how very well run I ultimately think East Bay MUD is. And you've already heard comments about debt servicing, our capital, and how we are looking toward the future. I think what you may hear from a few of the directors is the same frustration that many of you all have as our raises outpace what others may see as cost of living, although high in the Bay Area. And again, to remind people that we are very cognizant of that, but I would be remiss not to acknowledge how very well run I think this organization is, and to echo Director Smith, some of the best water in the country, and that does come with a cost.
Director Gomez?
So yeah, I believe that there's definitely a lot to be proud of in this budget, and I truly appreciate and understand all of the work that's required for the significant investment. And I believe we can all be very proud of the system that we collectively own. And at the same time, because of my previous comments, I want to be consistent, and so I'll be voting differently. But thank you. Thank you, everybody. Excellent work.
Okay, any other comments from the board before we take a roll call, or get a motion and a second to adopt the budget resolution?
Okay. I move.
Second?
Moved by Director Smith, seconded by Director Katz. Roll call, please.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Gomez?
Abstain.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Is this on both the water system and the wastewater system?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Director Odie?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Aye.
President Young?
Yes. 6-0 with one abstention.
Okay, so
Okay.
we're moving to item 20, so we're going to
Yeah.
start back at the top and do the position status report.
Oh, I thought we were gonna get
We-
presentations for both.
We were going to do both, but you went on the vote on the budget.
Okay.
It's okay, we can take it in that order.
Okay.
We will have a brief presentation on the proposed position resolution for fiscal years 26 and 27. And so what you'll see here is a vista that starts in fiscal year 23 so that you can see where staffing has been and where it is. And in the proposed 26 and 27 budget, you'll see 1,839 full-time civil service and civil service exempt staff positions proposed to be filled. 66 and in fiscal year 26, and then 68 in fiscal year 27 limited term or temporary construction positions, and intermittent positions 3.75 in both fiscal year 26 and fiscal year 27, full-time equivalent positions. Temporary positions 27.5 in fiscal year 26 and 27.5 full-time equivalents also in fiscal year 27 for a total FTE count shown at the bottom, and you can see the changes from the prior fiscal year there as well. Moving to the next position, there's a little bit of detail on the actual position changes that are proposed for fiscal years 26 and 27. So on the next slide, you'll see an addition of 13 positions broken down. There's LTs for concrete paving and utility laborers, 2 new data science positions, and 2 senior human resources analysts, 2 new ranger naturalists, and then 2 TC information systems support analysts, and 2 part-time education and outreach specialists that are the equivalent to 1 FTE. We are deleting 5 positions that are no longer needed and converting the status of 3.5 positions as detailed to the right. And then you'll see there's also a transfer to wastewater of 1 position for environmental health and safety. So for a net of 10.5 positions. If we move to the next slide, you'll see a similar slide for the wastewater system. And this has, again, 300 full-time equivalent civil service and civil service exempt positions for both fiscal years 26 and 27. 5 limited term or temporary construction positions in each of those 2 years, and 1 temporary or part-time equivalent position in each of the 2 fiscal years in the proposed budget. For total full-time equivalent of 306 positions in each of the next 2 years. The next slide shows the details. So again, addition of 2 positions, 1 electrical tech and 1 technical trades apprentice, deleting 1 position that's not needed. And then we have some conversions, and so that's not an addition or subtraction. And then 1 is the transfer that we saw from the water side for environmental health and safety. So if we move again here, the changes to classifications that are being proposed as part of this position resolution include 3 new classifications: data scientist 1 and 2, and an outreach and education specialist. And we've deleted an equipment superintendent and a senior legal secretary. So on the last slide, it says that essentially staff recommends that the board of directors adopt the position resolution to put into effect the changes that are included in the 26 and 27 budgets.
Public comment on this item? Eric Larson.
Good afternoon, President Young and board members and General Manager Chan. My name is Eric Larson. I'm President AFSCME Local 444. We object to the character of the added 444 positions, the limited term character of the meter reader mechanic, the paving crew foreman, the concrete finisher 2, and the utility laborer. All of these positions should be regular full-time civil service positions. The 6 meter reader mechanics are carryovers from limited term, 4-year limited term positions from last budget cycle, and that's being extended again this budget cycle, reauthorized as limited term to record water consumption and billing accuracy. I assure you we will always need to record water consumption and billing accuracy. These should be full-time regular civil service positions, all 6 of those meter reader mechanics. The paving crew foreman, limited term paving crew foreman is being added to reduce the concrete paving backlog. This backlog has grown over the last decade. The backlog is not going to go away after their 2-year stint is up. After the 2-year stint is up, the backlog is going to go back up. The paving crew foreman is going to be filled by a promotion of a concrete finisher, leaving a vacancy of that concrete finisher. If the paving crew foreman is a limited term, 2-year limited term, they're going to have to keep that position open for the concrete finisher to go back to after the term is over. So it's a net zero gain in positions. Similarly, the concrete finisher 2 that's being added to reduce the backlog, that backlog is going to come back as soon as that concrete finisher is released, so that should be a regular full-time permanent position. Similarly, the 2 utility laborers are proposed to be limited term, 2-year limited term positions. Again, this is to reduce the reliance on contracting out. We appreciate reducing the reliance on fully maintained and operated saw cutting. We have shown through a pilot study, through limited term paving rakers, that the district staff can perform the saw cutting for the pipeline extensions at a more efficient and more cost-effective rate. The mileage goal is continuing to increase. The mileage goal is not going down anytime soon. These utility laborers who will be assisting the saw cutters, doing the sweeping behind the saw cutters, should be regular full-time civil service positions, because we all know that the KPI for a pipeline rebuild is going to continue to go up. There's going to be no shortage of work for these utility laborers in the near term or even in the long term. These should be regular full-time civil service positions. Thank you for taking my comments.
Thank you.
I'll just comment, and certainly if anyone from O&M wants to say something as well. I think we believe that many of these positions are addressing backlogs, and so that this is the appropriate way to deal with that, and that there's also some work that's being done to understand costs, relative to the alternatives. So we continue to support the positions as contained in the existing position resolution. But I don't know if Clifford or if anyone else wants to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, certainly you'll see for the concrete finishers, there's a variety of reasons why we believe there's a backlog, and we want to make sure that we can address the backlog without necessarily making a commitment to a full-time, and then we'll review the data to see if that backlog is reduced and if there's a need for a permanent. With respect to the saw cutting, the mileage goal goes up next year, so we see a need to just ensure that the utility laborers can address the saw cutting needs. Again, giving us the flexibility that if indeed it doesn't address the needs or it doesn't reduce our costs, that we have some flexibility and not commit to a permanent position.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from the board? Okay, can I get a motion to adopt the staffing resolution under item 20?
So moved.
Moved by Director Lewis. Do I have a second? Second by Director Odie. Roll call, please.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Gomez?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Odie?
Yes.
Director Smith? President Young.
Yes. Okay, item 21 is to file the report and recommendation of the general manager to transfer unpaid liens for delinquent charges of owner-occupied single-family residential and multifamily residential accounts to the Alameda and Contra Costa Counties 25-26 property rolls. Do you have any public comment on item 21? Either online or in person?
None.
Okay. Any comments from board members? Okay, do I have a motion and a second for item 21?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Director
Lucia,
Katz,
is there a
seconded.
hand raised?
That's Billy Trice, and Billy Trice's hand has been up the entire meeting.
He's probably
Can we put it
not.
down?
I can put the hand down.
Roll call.
Director Katz moved, and who was the second?
Director Gomez.
Director Chan?
Yes.
Director Gomez?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Odie?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Aye.
President Young?
Yes.
May I ask if a property owner was intending to appear and either protest or resolve the charges, what would be that process before this action proceeds to the county tax collector?
They can definitely contact the district to settle the bill before we can transfer liens, and they have all the way up to August to make that happen. So the public hearing will take place in July. So between now and August, they still have an opportunity to work with us to settle the delinquent charges.
Thank you.
Okay, we will now move on to agenda item 22, our legislative update.
Thank you. Yes, we have Kathy Viatella, our Manager of Legislative Affairs, and Jennifer Williams, our Special Assistant in the Legislative Office, to provide the legislative update. We're going to begin with Jennifer to discuss a proposal for legislation to protect against the spread of the golden mussel. This topic was discussed this morning at the Legislative Human Resources Committee, and the committee unanimously supported staff's recommendation.
Good afternoon, President Young and directors. I will try and be brief. I know you're all probably tired, but happy to answer questions, of course. So we do have one legislative item in the report today, and it is a proposal. So unlike in the past where you see actual legislation, this is a proposal. And I'll give you a short version of a presentation of just, as you all know, golden mussels are an emerging issue in California and a threat to water systems. However, state law does not address golden mussels as it does dry-scented mussels or quagga or zebra mussels. So Department of Fish and Wildlife does not have technically the same authorities over golden mussel that it does dry-scented mussels. And then there's some issues with revolving in the law what water supply operators and owners and operators of reservoirs have to do in relation to dry-scented mussels. So there is and I want to say partly that in the report it mentions that it's thanks to EBMUD sponsored legislation that owners and operators of reservoirs that have not detected dry-scented mussels have to have prevention programs. So that's a key issue of why EBMUD's interested in this particular proposal. There's a coalition of water agencies seeking to amend state law to include golden mussels in the same statutes that cover dry-scented mussels. And we would like to be part of that effort to make sure that the Department of Fish and Wildlife has proper authorities, that water agencies have prevention programs and plans to prevent the spread of golden mussels. So we're asking the board to support, sponsor/support a position on the legislative proposal so that we can continue working with other water agencies to identify a legislative vehicle and then position on that legislative vehicle once it's identified. And I'm happy to answer questions, but I wanted to try and be brief.
Okay, Director Chan is excused for the rest of the meeting. Any questions on the items?
Yeah, I would like to ask, do we need urgency on this? Like, you know, are we requesting, or will we be advocating for the bill to be introduced as an urgency item? Or would we be looking for the regular session and then exploring executive action to declare a state of emergency? What's your understanding of the best way to proceed?
Yeah, my understanding is as the coalition, we're having conversations about what legislative vehicle to try and secure language in. There is the thought of maybe it could be done through a budget trailer bill, which wouldn't need an urgency because it goes into effect immediately. Or if a policy bill, a committee bill can be found, or an individual member's bill, it may just depend on the vehicle that can be found. We're certainly having the conversations about how to go forward.
But the idea is to get it in and get it done.
Hopefully,
right? So
yes.
whatever's the most expedient way to do that. Okay. Any other questions about the legislation? And there's no action, right? It's just an update.
There is.
Oh, okay. Oh, so we have to take you want us to,
I recommend that the district sponsor and support a proposal to protect against the spread of golden mussels.
sorry, I missed the action
second
item
that.
part. Okay. Moved by Director Katz, seconded by Director Gomez. Any other discussion or public comment on the item?
No public comment.
Okay. Then let's have a roll call vote.
Director Chan is excused. Director Gomez?
Yes.
Director Katz?
Yes.
Director Lewis?
Yes.
Director Odie?
Yes.
Director Smith?
Aye.
President Young?
Yes. Okay. Kathy,
Yes.
more.
Good afternoon, President Young and members of the board. I will be brief. Speaking about budget trailer bills, I'll just talk briefly about the budget. So we are nearing a key constitutional deadline for passage of the budget, which is this Sunday, June 15th. The legislature put forward its proposed budget. It's in print now. And now it will be moving forward. They could vote on it as early as Friday because of the 72-hour rule. And then there could be continuation of negotiations after the passage of the budget, which we have seen in past years. That's when the time when trailer budget bills, budget trailer bills will be released and come out, and there will be debate and negotiations around those. So it's still a very fluid situation. It can go to the end of session, which is the middle of September, or they could even come back in January of 2026 and amend the budget. The legislature is pushing back on the governor's proposal. Last month, I reported to you that in the May revise, he was looking at shifting money onto the climate bond and also onto the greenhouse gas reduction fund, or some of the areas of our interests. The legislature is pushing back on some of that and actually keeping some money in the general fund, so there's an area of negotiation. There's also negotiations going on related to funding for healthy rivers and landscapes. The legislature is rescinding some of that and rejecting some of the governor's proposals, but like last year, they did that and then they put it back into the budget before the end of session. So that's something on the table. And then the legislature has rejected the governor's proposed trailer bill language on Delta conveyance and also water quality plan control updates. But again, that's out of the legislative package, but it could come back in the next couple of months. So it's fluid, like I mentioned, and we're keeping track of that. Any questions about the budget? Okay, the other thing that happened, there's a lot of news right now going on. But yesterday, actually, the Senate Democratic Caucus voted to support and approve Senator Monique Limon. She is from Senate District, I think she's Senate District 21, which is along the Central Coast. She is now the President Pro Tem designee, and the transition will happen in January sometime. So she will be replacing Mike McGuire. He is the current Pro Tem. He's from the North Coast. He actually terms out next year, so this is a normal kind of transition. It's happening early, but she was announced as the designee. And then lastly, there's not very much to report. I mean, there's a lot happening on the federal front, but no new information from my last month's report. Congress, the Senate's basically reviewing the House reconciliation package and pushing back on that. they're setting up for, a fight here essentially, and they're not probably going to meet the president's July 4th deadline to get that passed. And at the same time, the Appropriations Committee and some of the policy committees are hearing the the president's proposed budgets for the different departments. And we're probably envisioning there are going to be more reductions in force that are coming, and some of them may be imminent. So that continues to all play out. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Director Gomez?
Thank you so much, Kathy. And this is not so much a question as a suggestion for a future presentation to perhaps the LAGE HR committee and maybe the full board. And this is what we had talked about regarding the Delta Conveyance Project, the healthy rivers and landscapes, and the levy, any levy-related stuff. And that might actually come under other items for consideration, but I thought I would bring it up with you because it's going to require your help to make that happen. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Jennifer. And in your packet is a monthly report, and at your places is a speakers bureau, and that's the end of my reports.
Okay. One page per item, President's budget here. That was agenda item 23. Items for future consideration. In addition to the one suggested by Director Gomez. If there are items for future consideration to the board president and general manager, please submit them. The only thing I would like to request is that when we were unable to schedule a follow-up to the board retreat at the date that we had anticipated, having it, and that is disappointing to me. I would request strongly that as we work towards another date, that people make themselves available. It's considered a part of your board member responsibilities to attend. I know scheduling is difficult. I know we've had a lot of special meetings lately in order to address the contract, but I think this is a very important issue that we need everybody. It needs to be the seven people participating. So that would be my count item for future consideration to be included. Director comments. If you have not filed your written comments or reports to the secretary, please do. Are there any verbal director comments or reports?
I just have a brief one. I just want to say thank you to staff for pulling off a really fantastic board briefing last Friday. So thank you, everybody who came. It was good.
Great. Anybody else? Director Lewis?
I know you probably wanted this in writing, but I did want to acknowledge in May that the Black elected officials held a luncheon wherein they recognized former Director Bill Patterson, including for his service to East Bay MUD. He and his son and I accepted it on his behalf since he was unable to be there. And then I'm happy to say that most recently I had the opportunity to attend both the swearing in and then the inauguration of Oakland's 52nd mayor, Barbara Lee.
Okay.
And I did some other stuff. I'll put it in writing. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. There are no other.
I think I had one.
Oh, sorry. I didn't see your
Sorry.
little hand up there, Jim.
That's okay, not a problem. I do want to also appreciate staff for the hard work in getting us to be able to participate in the San Leandro Cherry Festival parade. And also there was a booth there with lots of relevant information, which was super helpful for those who attended. So appreciate that. And also the West Oakland Liaison Group had the budget presentation. So that was also super helpful. So appreciate those two events.
Okay. Go ahead, Joey.
I just want to say that I did, and so did Director Gomez, attend the funeral services for the Honorable Federal Glover, former supervisor for Contra Costa. It was very touching. It was very real. And something out of the ordinary happened. All elected people were encouraged to stand up, to be seen, recognized, and appreciated for taking the time out and representing the places that we are elected to for him and for recognition by his family. I've been to many funerals and I've never seen that before. So it really made me feel good that we actually went. I knew him personally, but I also worked with him on things for the county. So felt good to go representing East Bay Mud.
Okay. With that, we will adjourn the meeting and reconvene for our next regular board meeting on Tuesday, June 24th, 2025 at 1:15 p.m. And this meeting is now adjourned.